Hey everybody, it's your buddy Vitamin D here. To be honest, I had to wake up a little earlier than I ordinarily would have on a Saturday morning. Reason for that is because I wanted to smoke a brisket out on the smoker. So I decided with all this free time I got, I'm hanging out drinking some beer. I was going to go ahead and put together a video I've been wanting to do for a while. And the video I want to do is the gear that I ended up getting off the trail with in Maine on my Appalachian Trail hike. If you're not familiar with this channel, left from base of Hammock Falls March 4th, 2017, hiked from there to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Then when I got to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, decided to do a flip-flop. Actually decided to do a flip-flop really early in the trail, but when I got to Harpers Ferry, took a train slash bus and then like an Uber. I forget exactly how it went. But anyways, got up to Millinocket, Maine, did Mount Katahdin, started heading south, got about 120 miles of Maine done, and then broke my foot, had to get off the trail. But anyways, I spent more than 6 months on the section of trail that I did, so I feel like my gear, it's got the wear and tear on it that you would expect. So I give you a good idea of what it's like to have a 6 plus month hike on your gear. Plus, I did a couple of hikes before with it, and I've been on 2 backpacking trips since with the same gear. So we're going to keep it simple. One moment. Sorry about that. What I'm going to do is just go through my bag. I've got it packed here exactly how it would be packed when I would leave camp, in the morning. So I'm going to go through it in order of how it's packed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with everything that's on the outside of the pack. So I guess we'll start with the Crocs to get them out of the way. I brought Crocs as camp shoes. To be completely honest, I wouldn't bring them again. They were nice in the beginning. However, you're going to be tempted to walk around town in these things when you get into town. And, for me personally, walking around for a day on concrete in these things tore my feet up pretty bad. Didn't really recognize that was happening until I get back on the trail. And for like the first day and a half, I'd have really bad pain in my arches. So I finally, after a few times, realized it was the Crocs. The only reason I really carried them as long as I did is, as I told you, I decided pretty early on in my hike that I would do a flip-flop, and at Harpers Ferry I'd go up to Maine, and I knew from research I did before on the trail that when you get to Maine, there's a lot of pretty sizable rivers that you have to ford. There's no bridges. Main reason for that is because some of those rivers, right after the snow melts in the spring, they get so big that they would wash any kind of bridge out. So there are several rivers that you have to ford. So I hung on to them just for that. Shouldn't have. They weigh like more than a pound. And to be completely honest, what I would do instead of this, if I had it to do again, and I've tried this since the AT and I can verify it works well, is if you have a non-waterproof, non-Gore-Tex just trail running shoe, which is what I hiked in, I would actually recommend that if you need shoes to ford rivers, which I actually preferred to have instead of going barefoot, what you can do is you can pull your insoles out of your shoes and take your socks off, keep those dry, just wear like the frame of the shoe, and at that point you can ford the river. When you get to the other side, dry your feet off with a bandana or whatever you've got, and then put your insoles back in your shoes, put your socks back on, and 9.5 times out of 10, your shoes, everything's going to be completely dry within a half hour of hiking. It just worked really well for me. So if I had to do it again, I wouldn't even bring these. Some people loved them. They're too heavy for what they are. Didn't use them much. And with Solomon shoes, I had speed laces on them. So it was easy enough to get in and out of those shoes when I was at camp, if I needed to. So that's my Crocs. Next thing's going to be my tent. This tent, I will go ahead and say it, there is no reason to have any other tent for a through hike, especially of the Appalachian Trail. This thing is amazing. It's the Z-Pax Duplex tent. There's plenty of space in it. It's made out of Cuban fiber. It's extremely lightweight. There's no tent poles. You use your trekking poles to set it up. Never had any problems with the durability of the Cuban fiber or anything like that. I had one night of a lot of snow and kind of mixed with ice that was really heavy. People's tents were collapsing. I had a non-freestanding tent, didn't collapse. So you just use your trekking poles as your tent poles, and you rely on the guy lines to keep it taut. You'll get pretty good at setting this thing up pretty fast. out on the trail. One thing I will go over real quick that I don't feel like a lot of people did when I was doing research for this tent is the stakes that I used. To be honest, I started with these super lightweight titanium stakes. They were real small. They broke extremely fast. I think I ended up buying these at the NOC. It was that soon that I had to replace my tent stakes. And what I found works extremely well is the MSR groundhog stakes. They are amazing. You need 8 stakes to set up the Z-Packs duplex. Your 2 main stakes that come off of where your trekking poles are and where your vestibules are, I use the full-size MSR groundhog stakes. And for the other 6 guy lines, I just used the little MSR mini groundhog. Saves you a little bit of weight. They're extremely good, extremely strong. Can't tell you how many times I had to beat these things into the ground with a rock. They never once broke. They just awesome stakes, and for what they are, they don't weigh much. So keep that in mind. That's my tent, my stakes. This tent, I will mention, this is the spruce green color, and you'll notice if you go to order it from Z-Packs that if you order the spruce green color, it's a heavier fabric. It's a thicker fabric, so it's 0.74 ounces per cubic yard, I believe, versus something that's around 0.49, 0.5, which is their standard one. So this offers 50% kind of a thicker material, and the weight penalty is only a few ounces, so it's trivial. So for something like a through hike to where you are going to put some serious wear and tear on your gear, highly recommend going with the spruce green color. That's a little bit thicker, just in case. You never know. Never dealt with hail or anything, but tons of rain, as you can imagine, and ice, snow, stuff like that. This thing held up incredibly well. No reason to buy any other tent for a through hike, unless you already have like a really, really lightweight tent that you could use. I mean, it is expensive. It's 600 and something bucks, but I highly recommend this tent. All right, the next thing is, this is simple. This is just a 700 milliliter smart water bottle. I had to buy this. I bought 2 of them. I had to buy this just to use the flip top cap because I use 1 liter, the bigger water bottles, and they don't come with the flip top cap. They only come with just kind of this standard screw cap, and I really liked the flip top cap to be drinking on the hoof and stuff like that. So I kept 1 of these extra ones, and to be honest, hey, you may run into somebody out on the trail with a little whiskey or something they want to share with you, and you got a way to carry it. Trust me, it happens. It happened to me a couple of times. Or if you're in Shenandoah, pretty easy to go to a wayside, get a bottle of wine. This is only 50 milliliters shy of a bottle of wine as far as volume goes. Pack you a bottle of wine out to camp, hang out, enjoy it. I mean, it works. It's definitely not a necessary piece of gear, but I'm showing you everything that I carried. So carried that for most of the hike, just as an extra bottle. And you can also use that as a dirty water bottle to carry dirty water if you have a bladder failure, malfunction or something while you're between towns, which actually happened to me once, because you can filter from that bottle to another bottle. So it's just good to have another one. Hardly weighs anything, and I had to buy it anyway for the flip top cap. So next thing, bandana. There is a million uses for just a plain old cotton bandana. You can get them cheap on Amazon. In fact, all of the gear that I have here that I'm going to show you, I'll go ahead and put links in the description so that you can go see exactly what it is, what it costs, what it weighs, other people's reviews of it. So I'll put the links to everything that I have in the description. But yeah, you just need basic bandanas. This one I actually picked up at the ATC in Harper's Ferry. You don't need anything fancy. But just cotton bandanas, you can use them to clean up water, wipe stuff down. If you're cooking with a cook pot, you can clean that out. Simple enough. Carry at least 2 of them. I always kept 1 on the outside of my pack and then 1 in my clothes bag. So I always had 1 dry and 1 really easy to get to. It just works. Spoon. This is the Optimus titanium long-handled spoon. There's other companies that make very similar stuff. No reason to have a fork, no reason to have a spork, no reason to have anything shorter than a long-handled spoon. That comes in handy a lot, especially if you're using Mountain House bags, or a lot of people were using Ziploc bags, which I did as well in the beginning. Just a long-handled spoon. Even when you get to town, never felt like I really, go to the grocery store, buy food, like I couldn't eat it with a spoon. It just works. So highly recommend this spoon. All right. This is just an ever new 1.5 liter dirty water bag to collect water to filter with. Carried a 2 liter, which you'll see shortly as well. But this is just a spare one if I had to stop and get, a lot of water before I got to camp. It was good to have the extra capacity to carry. Or if the water source was far enough away, from wherever I was camping, it was really convenient to get enough to where I wouldn't have to go back to the water source in the morning. I would just go fetch enough to where I had enough for that night as well as water for the morning. I'd just filter it in the morning, be good to go. So it was good to have. And then a pack cover. This is a Cuban fiber pack cover. Now my pack, this is a Z-Packs Arc Haul, which I'm going to go over last. It's a very highly water resistant pack, but just a little insurance policy for you. This thing hardly weighs anything. It's Cuban fiber. You can get it from Z-Packs. It worked extremely well. Never had any problems with getting water in my bag. I do have some redundancy built in, which you'll see, but it works really well and it's extremely lightweight. All right, a mosquito net. I never once used this, but to be completely honest with you, I really plan to have to use this in the mid-Atlantic states where the mosquitoes are really bad. And depending on when you start your hike and where you start it from, you may end up in black fly season 2, which is really bad in Maine certain times of year, which is pretty miserable. Picked it up at the NOC. It's super light. I would take this again even though I never had to use it, because that would be a real pain to not have it and need it. All right, last thing in the outside pocket is what I affectionately refer to as my shit kit. Just a small Z-Packs Cuban fiber dry bag. You want to keep everything in here dry, particularly your toilet paper. And you want to keep this on the outside of your pack if possible for quick deployment. That's for obvious reasons. But inside I even kept my toilet paper in a Ziploc bag. Trust me, you can never have too much toilet paper. I ran out of toilet paper more than once on the trail. Not a good situation. It was good that I was hiking with other people, and it could have been worse. Let's just say that. But yeah, toilet paper, keep it dry at all times. So put it in a Ziploc bag within your whatever bag you're carrying it in, which I would recommend a waterproof bag. Then this is the Deuce of Spades trowel. This thing's awesome. Made by thetentlab.com. It's only 0.6 ounces for a trowel. You definitely need to bury your business. The only thing I didn't really like about it is it can kind of cut into your hand when you're trying to get into kind of harder ground. I did see a handful of people though that wrapped the handle in 550 cord or paracord to kind of soften it up. I never really, I just got good at how I held it, was able to use it. These things are extremely good, extremely light, and it's very necessary. All right, then I don't have a toothbrush in here with me because I threw it away, but toothpaste and toothbrush, almost any town you can get this stuff at a Walmart, at a drugstore, at grocery stores even. These little things, usually in the travel section, you can find these with the little toothbrush that breaks into 2 pieces, and it's real small, real light for like $1 or $2. So every time I ran out of toothpaste, I just bought one of those little deals and was able to replace my toothbrush and toothpaste all at the same time. Keep stuff hygienic, so you definitely need that. And the reason I kept it in this bag is because more than once I would get ready to leave camp and be like, oh man, I forgot to brush my teeth. And so I just got it to where it was easy to get to on the outside of my pack, because that happened pretty regularly, especially in the morning. Then these little easy towels. Got to give Craig M. His trail name was Spielberg. He hiked the AT 2016. Watched his, some videos on his gear. Got this idea. These work really well. They're just these small. They kind of come in like these little tablet forms, but you just put a little bit of water on them, and they fold out to be a nice size kind of wet wipe. So it was great to like wipe your legs down and kind of clean yourself up after a long day of hiking. You'd have mud and sweat and all kinds of nasty stuff all over you. These worked really well, and they're extremely lightweight for what they are. I think one of these weighs like half of what a wet wipe that you would buy at the store weighs. Last time I weighed it, I mean, it's grams, it's trivial, and they fold out to be a bigger wipe. So they worked well. I always carried like a little tube of them. You could pick them up on Amazon, have them sent from town to town, so you don't have to carry a big supply of them. Then just a small Bic Mini lighter. I always carried 2 lighters, another one's in my food bag. I always wanted one on the outside of my bag that was easy to get to. Small, big, mini, you need a lighter for obvious reasons. And then one of the things that you should not, and I would not, live without on the trail, bug spray. This is just something I think I bought at a grocery store. It's just 40% DEET. Really good stuff. The no-see-ums were extremely bad. And this stuff works for me. It didn't work for everybody. Spray it down. I would spray my legs every morning during warmer weather regardless, because ticks, they say ticks don't like DEET. So it was just an extra insurance policy. You know, I wore long sleeves at all times on the trail just to protect from the sun more than anything. But, you know, on my legs, I went ahead and sprayed them down with the DEET. So bug spray, it's a must. There's natural, if you don't like DEET. There's other stuff. I don't know how well it works. I just cut through all that, got DEET, and it worked for me. So that's it for what's in that bag. And then this guy, this is the Thermarest Z seat, which comes in handy. Came in handy a lot. It's super lightweight. 9 times out of 10, I use this just as like a welcome mat in the vestibule of my tent. And the rest of the time, you know, that way when I would get in and out of my tent, I could put my knees on it. They wouldn't get wet, or if there were sharp rocks or there was roots or something, I wouldn't be beating my knees up getting in and out of my tent. But also when you stop for lunch or stop for a break, if the log you want to sit on or the rocks you're trying to sit on are wet, it's good to have. And then if you you know, are sitting at camp for any extended period of time, you could even kind of double it over. It offered a little more padding. I use this thing multiple times every day. Really lightweight. They're not very expensive. I highly recommend carrying it. It's a good piece of gear. All right, water bottles. I had 2 Smart Water 1 liter bottles, as I told you already, just to have clean water in. This, believe it or not, is actually an original bottle that I started the trail with. So this was with me for over 6 months. So that's a testament to just how strong and durable these Smart Water bottles are. Like I said, if you want the flip top lids, it's a personal preference. I really liked them. You got to buy the smaller ones, just rob the lids off. Do whatever you want with the smaller ones. You saw what I did with one of my smaller ones. And I'm going to show you what I did with another one of my small ones that I had to buy. Is a scoop for dirty water. This is a mandatory piece of equipment on the trail. Trust me, you're going to get to water sources, and even in the guidebooks it's going to say it's a friggin' waterfall or, you know, some big substantial source. You're going to get there, it's a daggone mud puddle. So you're going to have to scoop your water. Or if you know, you can't get your bags in a right position even on a flowing water source, you know, or it's not deep enough, you may have to at least top your bags off using a scoop. Take this to you every time you go to a water source. Trust me, I forgot it more than once, and every time I'd say, oh, I'd never make that mistake again. Certainly I made that mistake again, but just kind of kept this all together, you know, in a side pouch. And what you see on the outside here, that's a 2-liter Evernew water bladder. Really recommend the Evernew water bladders over anything else I saw on the trail. They're really strong, they work well. The threads work with a Sawyer filter, which I highly recommend. The ones that come with the filters, they just blow apart real quick. They're going to leave you frustrated, and don't bother with them. You'll find a bunch of them in hiker boxes, and you'll have to check, make sure they don't have holes in them if you're trying to take them. Just because people end up upgrading to better bladders. And the newer platypus bladders, which I like platypus bladders, but the newer ones, the threads don't match up with the Sawyer water filter. And in my opinion, the Sawyer squeeze water filter is pretty much the only option for a water filtration system. If you're going to thru hike the AT, don't waste your time, effort, and all that with the Mini. It has a much slower flow rate, and then the Mini also clogs up extremely fast compared to the Sawyer squeeze. This worked really well. This red piece that you see here on top, this is called a tornado tube. It's actually a little toy. It's so that you can make a tornado by connecting 2-liter bottles, fill one of them with water, kind of a kid thing. Let it, you know, when it drops down, it creates a tornado into the other one. Works really well. The threads match up with the Sawyer squeeze. as well as smart water bottles. And with this, it allows air to pass through as well, so that you don't have to collapse your bottles to, you know, get through the air like you would if you bought the Sawyer coupling. And the Sawyer coupling costs more than this anyway, so definitely look for the link to this in the description. It's only a few bucks. That was one of my favorite pieces of gear. And also, you know, it connects the bottle so you're not trying to, you know, line stuff up, and obviously you're out in the woods. The ground's never even. It just keeps stuff nice and tidy. Good to go. Highly recommend the Tornado Tube, and highly recommend the Sawyer Squeeze water filter. One thing about the Sawyer Squeeze though, you need to make sure it never freezes. So if you're looking at you know, possibility of freezing temperatures at night, I always put that in a Ziploc bag to keep it from leaking, because once there's water in it, obviously it could let water out, even though I tried to get as much out of it as possible. Put it in a Ziploc bag and then in the foot of my sleeping bag. It was never a problem after that. So then this wasn't in my initial gear video, but I picked this up actually at an REI in Atlanta right before I left for the trail as I was on my way, which turned out to be really cool. It's just a spot device. It's the Generation 3, I think. I don't know. As I'm making this video, it's the latest generation that they have. It does take batteries. It takes 2 AA's. You do need to get the better ones, the lithium ones or whatever they are. But I was using this 10 to 12 hours a day and got about 2 months out of each set of batteries. So it really wasn't that bad at all. Coolest thing about it is that, you know, I was able to send a link to friends and family, and they were able to track me in real time. It sent up a ping to a GPS. They could get on their computer or their phone and see exactly where I was. It's really cool. And then now that I'm off the trail, you know, I've got maps and everything that this thing collected, showed everything I hiked, that it's time and date stamped. It's really cool. Definitely not 100% necessary, but it does have an SOS feature, which would be the main reason to carry this. So if you're 2 days from one town, you know, and then 2 days out of the next, you get snake bit out in the woods, that's probably going to be a good call if you don't have any kind of cell phone coverage, which happens on the trail. Some carriers do better than others with cell phone coverage, but if there's ever an emergency, it just sends a GPS signal to search and rescue in the local area, and ideally everything would work out good. And then this is just a little AT hang tag. Got this, registered my through hike with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. I'm sorry. Trust me, they'll thank you. Register your hike. It's free. You get kind of a cool hang tag. Pretty much everybody that was through hiking had one of these hanging from their bag out there. So it was a way to kind of differentiate. I mean, within a few weeks into the trail, you just knew who was through hiking versus section or whatever. But yeah, it was cool to have, and they appreciate it. It helps them keep up with how many people are starting the trail, how many people end up in Harper's Ferry and when, and just do it. Do them a favor. It's free, and they send you a hang tag. So on the other part of my pack, the back side, I did add these 2 shoulder pouches. On this side, I carried Body Glide, just for quick deployment. Trust me, carry it. Even if you don't think you're going to need it, you're going to get to sweating. You're going to have salty sweat. You're going to build up friction. It's better to have it, or if you get a hot spot, you know, and you're maybe developing a blister, put some Body Glide on it. This stuff is awesome. It's worth its weight in gold. I love it. And then just a cheap Swiss Army knife. Somebody gave this to me before I got on the trail. Just, you don't care about the blades getting chewed up. And I mean, it's not great blades, but you know, self-explanatory. You need some sort of knife, and this one has all kinds of different ones. A bottle opener. It's got a little Phillips head screwdriver, which came in handy because the cams on my trekking poles actually you tighten them down if they start slipping with Phillips head. So I had that while I was out on the trail. And then a stick pick. I mean, I never once used that. It's cool in theory. I have an iPhone 6S Plus phone, which is a big, heavy phone. It was kind of a pain to try to put it on the end of my trekking pole, and then it would want to slide down because the phone's so heavy. But if you have a lighter phone, maybe lighter camera, it's awesome in theory. I just never personally used it. Then this pouch, I carried, this is where I kept my GoPro for filming on the trail. When I wasn't using my phone to film, I used a GoPro Hero 5, and I just kept it in an Injinji sock. I had this, I started with sock liners, realized that they aren't for me, don't need them. Just went to a single pair of socks, never had problems. So I just, in order to protect the lens and the screen on the back, just kept this in an Injinji sock from getting scratched up with the Cuban fiber in my other pouch. And I bought that just so I have a quick way to get to it and film if something was coming up. So, all right, and then I have 2 hip belt pouches which I added to my pack, and one of them kept my phone. Just kept it in a darn tough sock. If you watch my videos, you know that I actually got water in the case to this. It was the LifeProof Nude phone case, and it was the one that was clear on the back, which I'm glad it was, because I was able to see water in it on a day. It was just pissing rain on me all day, so I finally got it open, dried it up. Had this darn tough, was an extra sock. It's pulling apart at the seam, so I got it nice and clean. Just slid it in there for protection, just like the GoPro. You know, keeps the lens on the camera from getting scratched or the screen from getting scratched, and just kept that the way it was the whole time. I wasn't about to spend another $100 on a case that was probably going to leak. So, and then if I was expecting any rain, I kept a Ziploc bag in there too. I could put it in, and also in the Ziploc bag, I just kept a little lav mic. If I was making video or whatever and I needed decent audio, it was good. These things are cheap, good to have. They work with your phone, you plug them right in. With a GoPro, you do have to buy an adapter. It's like $50. It's extremely overpriced for what it is. But if you want to use external audio with your GoPro, which I recommend because the GoPro audio is horrible, you do have to buy that adapter. And then you can plug a little lav mic in or another. This is the lightest thing for the trail other than any other external mic. So that is that. And then in this pocket, the only thing I kept was a bag of incidentals, which is just earplugs for at night. I had earphones if I wanted to listen to a podcast or music, nail clippers, an extra smart water bottle lid, and then my headlamp, which is the Petzl Reactic Plus. Highly recommend this headlamp. Of course, you want to keep it somewhere it's easy to get to. If it starts to get dark on you while you're hiking, you don't want to have to rifle through your pack and find your headlamp. This thing had great battery life. It was awesome. Especially in the reactive mode where it knows how much light you need based on the ambient light, and it's rechargeable. It's just super nice. It's not the lightest one, but I feel like stuff on your hip is almost free weight anyway. It's just like having extra body fat. It's no big deal. But highly recommend this headlamp. It worked extremely well. So that's it for everything on the outside of my pack. As I told you, I got a brisket smoking out back. So I'm going to go check on that bad boy, and when I get back, we'll go through everything that's on the inside of my pack. So see you in a few. Let's check this thing out. I'm pretty excited. All right. We are getting there. Man. Pretty juiced about that. I'm eating really good tonight for a few nights, I'm sure. But anyways, back to what you came to watch. One thing I did forget to mention in that last part there, that was on the outside of my pack, Nalgene Canteen. You may think this is gross, but it is what it is. Use this as a piss bottle in my tent, at night, if you don't want to get in and out of your tent, especially if it's raining or cold, or a combination of the two, which happens frequently on the trail. You could just, use this. Had a nice wide mouth. It's designed to hold liquid, so never had a failure with, the old lid. And, you get into town, wash it out really good. And then, obviously, you're going to want to replace this more than once over the course of 6 months, because no matter how much you clean them, just for peace of mind, you want to replace it. And I had no problem finding these at outfitters along the way on the trail. So highly recommend this. I don't care if you think it's gross. Then you can get in and out of your tent every time you've got to pee. So to the inside of my bag. All right, they say you pack your fears. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. Apparently my fear was having my gear get wet, because as you saw, this is a highly water resistant pack. The material itself, it's fully seam sealed and all that. Plus, as you saw, I have a pack cover, Cuban fiber, fully waterproof pack cover. And then on the inside of my pack, I have the Z-Packs Cuban fiber pack liner, which worked flawlessly. It was amazing, never had problems with it. Some people use trash contractor bags or compactor, I don't know. But they were just it always looked like a pain when they were using them. They had these big bags they're trying to roll down, get in and out. This one's just like all your other bags, your dry bags from Z-Packs. Velcro across the top, roll it down just like the top of your pack, like your bags, like I just said. It was waterproof on its own, so I think it was like $50. To me, it was worth the $50 for 6+ months of use. If you're going out for a weekend, maybe not so much. You can use a trash bag, but yeah, highly recommend it. It worked well, so it is what it is. The first bag on the inside of my bag. And like I said, going farther on, you pack your fears. Not only do I have all that stuff we just talked about, but everything in my bag is in Z-Packs, Cuban fiber, roll top, dry bags. So it is what it is. None of my stuff ever got wet, so, it worked. All right. First bag kept on top, just in case I needed to get to it, this was electronics stuff. I have an Anchor battery in here. This thing's like 21,000 milliamp hours, way more than anybody really needs. I was constantly filming on the trail with my phone, a GoPro, which has horrible battery life, the GoPro, so you're constantly charging that battery. My headlamp needed charged every now and then, not regularly, but if I was doing night hiking, I would have to charge it, but it would definitely easily go from town to town without needing charged. It was still way too much battery. Should have listened to everybody that told me before I left, but I did have this one already. It weighs like 12 ounces, I think, which is a lot. One of the heavier things in my bag. But anyways, it's a good idea to have some backup battery. I would say 10,000 milliamp hours is probably sufficient for the vast majority of people, even most people that are vlogging on the trail with a phone/GoPro setup and a headlamp that needs charge. I think that if you keep your phone in airplane mode so it doesn't die quickly, 10,000 milliamp hours should be extremely sufficient. You probably won't even use all that. But then just my charging cords, iPhone charging cord, GoPro charging cord, and battery charging cord. Unfortunately, they're all different. Is what it is. I had to carry them. And then I also in here have it's a 4-port USB, the AC adapter you can plug into a wall when you get into town. That way you can, with only using one outlet, charge up 4 different things via the USB. 4 is pretty much overkill. I already owned this one, and I looked at the weight difference between this one and the 2-port, and it was trivial. And I already owned this, so I kept it. And trust me, there was more than once that other people actually really appreciated that I had the extra space for them to charge, because I only ever needed usually 2 at a time. But power outlets are at a premium at pretty much every hostel. If you get into a restaurant in town, there's other hikers there. It's good to have. So you'll need one of some sort, but this one's good. Anchor makes it. And like I said, all this stuff will be in links in the description, but you can pick it up on Amazon. It's kind of heavy. It's like 3 or 4 ounces, but it was necessary. All right, this is not a joke. I forgot this was in here. You're probably going to beat me up about this, but this is a Chromecast. I never said that I was going super ultra light. I tried to keep my pack as light as comfortably possible, which I recommend you do as well. But this was great, man. When me and my hiking buddy Stuck Norse would get into town, we'd get into a hotel, you could plug this in. I'd say probably 70% of the time we had no problems getting connected to the Wi-Fi network and watching Planet Earth or Netflix or even our friends vlogging on the trail, on the TV in the room. And then probably 30-35% of the time there was issues with getting stuff connected. You know how that goes, especially in the real cheap hotels. But really enjoyed having the Chromecast. You can pick them up at Walmart, Best Buy, Amazon, whatever, for like $35, and it doesn't weigh much, so doesn't take up much space either. So go ahead and judge me, I don't care. Another thing, this was not something that I started the trail with, but I'm here to tell you, highly recommend it. I would not do a through hike without this in the future. In fact, phase 2 of my hike, when I go back and do the section of the trail that I wasn't able to do, this is coming with me. This was absolutely one of my favorite pieces of gear. I bought this in Damascus, Virginia, It's the Eno Sub 7 hammock. The hammock itself with carabiners weighs about 6.5 ounces, and I made my own suspension using paracord, 550 cord, which you can just look up on YouTube. It's really easy to do. This is awesome. If you're going to take any kind of zeros in the woods or Neros in the woods, or when you get to camp, you just want to hang out. Honestly, I used this pretty much every single day. If it was not too cold or raining, I strung this up every single day when I got to camp, even if it was for only an hour. It takes all the pressure off of your back, off of your feet. I mean, it's a hammock. And for 8 ounces, and to put 8 ounces into perspective, I know everything adds up, but for a luxury item this legendary, this weighs what? Let's see here. All right, this, and water's heavy, so I don't want you to get me wrong here, but this is a 1 liter bottle of water. This entire hammock with suspension weighs what this would weigh if this was 25% full. So do the math. Do you think it's worth it? I'll drink 1/4 of a liter at the water source and carry less water to carry this. I'm telling you. And hey, maybe you're the hiker that just, all you do is hike, and then when you get to camp, all you want to do is eat and sleep. To be completely real with you, that is in no way, shape, or form appealing to me. And I'm not the guy to listen to if that's your style of hiking. But, if you want to enjoy the trail, still have a reasonably light pack, and, not be beat up by having a 40-pound pack on your back, I'm your guy. All right. Then I had just a kind of a bag. This was my first aid kit, which, to be completely honest with you, all it consisted of was KT tape, ibuprofen, and Imodium. That's all I ever needed. I had like Band-Aids and stuff, got rid of them. The KT tape works great. It's not perfect, but they designed this stuff to, swimmers should be able to use it. It's flexible, it's strong. Yeah, it's going to eventually peel off. It's not going to work awesome when it's wet, but way better than pretty much anything else I found. So KT tape, Imodium for obvious reasons, and ibuprofen, again for obvious reasons. And then I had just a couple more smart water bottle lids in here, and the patch kit for my Thermarest Neo Air, which is the sleeping pad that I used, which is inflatable. If it were to have gotten a hole in it, I have the patch kit. And then also Z-Packs sells little rolls of Cuban fiber repair tape. So if you're starting to get any kind of a rip in anything Cuban fiber, works really well. And as you see, I've got a sea of Cuban fiber. Had to use it a few times, but it's good to have. It's super lightweight, and it actually works extremely well. So that was in this bag. Then a bandana. Like I said, there's another bandana. I'm going to recommend, you can never be too careful. Odds are in your favor, you'll never need it. But if you're going to carry 2 bandanas, carry one that's relatively high vis, so people can see it. If you ever have to flag anybody down or get somebody's attention, it's good to have orange. Or if you're out on the trail at a time of year, which I was not, at the times I was where I was on the trail, I didn't have to run into hunting issues. But, orange is a good color to have. And also, if you're hiking with your buddies and you want to flag off a side trail, you went to go look at a waterfall, this was kind of a universal thing. Hang this off. They knew, where you were, what you were doing. All right. Then just a space blanket. This thing's super light. I think I picked this. I didn't even start with this. I picked this up in a hiker box just because it's so light. And, man, you never know. I mean, dude, there's times that, I got pretty cold. I never had to use it, but man, it was good to have. Peace of mind for what it is. Paid nothing for it, and it's super lightweight. All right, then this is a buff. Never once used this. This was one of those pieces of gear I thought, this thing's good for a million different things. I'll use it all the time. Initially, I was going to slide this over my pillow, which is one of my other stuffs actually. You'll see here in a minute, but I was going to use that, but I got to where your standards change on the trail. Cuban fiber against your head is totally comfortable as long as it's soft. So I never even bothered pulling this out. And this doesn't keep me warm. Maybe it keeps you warm. I don't know. I had 2 bandanas, so if I needed to wipe up sweat or clean stuff. I just didn't use it. All right. This was one of the best ideas I've ever had. This is just a small, I think this is a grout sponge from Home Depot. Or you can get like a car wash sponge, cut it in half. This was awesome. These things weigh nothing, and they compress down to nothing in your bag. And this saved me more than once as far as just super easy just to wipe down if you get any kind of condensation on the inside of your tent. And the Cuban fiber tents are extremely hydrophobic, so they don't like seep in like a lot of sil nylon tents will. So even if it rained the night before and I don't want to pack out a wet tent, well, my tent wouldn't be wet, but I'm carrying all the water that's beaded up on the tent. I could just wipe it down with this sponge extremely fast, wring it out, strap it to the side of my pack, and it was dry in no time. Weighs nothing. Everybody should carry something like this. And then one time, I will tell you, this totally made life easy. I was in Glasgow, Virginia. I had set my tent up. The ground was really hard at the area I had set it up at, so I couldn't get my trekking pole all the way in. And I wasn't expecting any rain, so I wasn't worried about it. It wasn't windy. But sure enough, a little front blew through. It was like a little microburst. It was raining sideways. We were in the Italian restaurant having a good old time. I get back to where my tent is. Another hiker's like, "Hey, whose tent is that?" "It's mine." "Oh, well, it blew over, or one of the trekking poles collapsed in, when it got super windy." And luckily he was there. He's like, I went and righted it, which he did, which was awesome. But by the time he had done that, it was raining so hard, once he noticed that, there was like 2 inches of water floating around. And my air mattress was actually floating around on the inside of my tent. Within like 3 minutes using this, because it absorbed so much water, I had it completely dry on the inside of that tent. And luckily, I had kept everything in my tent. It was all out of my bag, but it was still rolled up in these dry sacks, so everything stayed completely dry, except for the bottom of my air mattress, which was easy, as you can imagine, to wipe up. So this worked out really well. So that's it for this bag. All right, then my food bag. This is just the Z-Packs bear bag, food bag. It comes with the line to heave it over a tree, as well as a little pouch that you can put rocks in. Worked out really well. Kept one extra tent stake in here as well. If you're going to use the PCT style of hanging, you might as well use your extra tent stake. Always carry one extra tent stake because you never know, particularly if your tent is non-freestanding. My tent 100% relies on guy lines to stay upright, so it's always good to have one extra tent stake. You never know, you may lose one, forget one could break. So anyways, I kept it in my food bag, and then, for hanging bear bags, use the PCT style. That's the most effective way. And I'll actually put a link to a video that I found most simple to do it in the description of this video. So if you want to learn how to do that and you're not familiar with it, it's really easy to do. And then obviously my food, Ziploc bags, which you can have too many of because they can, believe it or not, get heavy. But keep several extra Ziploc bags. They come in handy a lot, but I don't think my food bag was ever this small, even coming into town. And I got my food dialed in pretty good, but still, that's that. Oh, and I was going to show you, when I mentioned the Cuban fiber repair tape on here, don't know how well you can see it, but I actually had to make a repair to this bag when I was cooking. I did send my cook set home. You'll see an absence of that. But I actually knocked my pocket rocket over. It was between my legs, knocked it over away from me, and my food bag was a little farther out, and it just blew a hole through the bag, as you can imagine. But Cuban fiber repair tape over it. This happened in Bly Gap. That's if you're not familiar with it, that's the first place you get to when you cross into North Carolina. So this little patch held up on this bag for probably 5.5+ months. So that Cuban fiber repair tape works really well. So don't get too wound up about getting a hole in your... this Cuban fiber stuff is expensive, but you can repair it. It's no big deal. All right. All right. This is a rain jacket, which it's actually a nice rain jacket. It's made by Mountain Hardwear. I've had it for a long time. It works great for if you're not hiking. If you're just walking from your truck, to your office or into a store. Rain jackets are great when you're hiking. You generate way too much body heat. I don't care what anybody says. This thing is a $200-300 rain jacket. It's got these big pit zips. It's this super breathable material. When you're hiking, no matter how cold it is, these are just going to make you sweat. Don't wear this while you're hiking unless you're really, really cold. Wear it as a windbreaker. That's the only reason I kept it. But like an idiot, I kept this Mountain Hardwear one the whole time, which weighs like a pound, which for what it is, that's respectable. But if I had it to do again, and when I go back on the trail, I'm just going to bring a Frog Togs top. Yeah, they're not durable. If they tear, you patch them with KT tape. Probably Cuban fiber repair tape would work for it. And then if it gets so many holes in it to where it's time to replace it, you're not even mad about it. The whole rain suit's like $20. So, and that too, I would only use like in town or, as a windbreaker. That's the only reason I carried this. But like a bonehead, I carried this heavy freaking Mountain Hardwear variety the whole time. So, won't be doing that again. And I had plenty of opportunity to send that home. I sent a couple of boxes home with stuff, and for whatever reason, I didn't send that home. I've got nothing for you. All right. This is my clothes bag. As you can see, you always want to keep one set of clothes completely dry. What I used, I actually had 2 identical sets of hiking clothes that I would rotate. And if I didn't have to change while I was out on the trail for hiking, then I was able to just, right when I got to town, I could get showered up, cleaned up, and I had a clean set of clothes that I could change into and then go get something to eat was always priority. Get some beer was always right in there with getting something to eat. And then I could worry about stuff like doing laundry. But if you, if you get your hiking clothes super wet or whatever and need to swap them out, then you do need to get laundry done like right when you get into town, because you don't want to get a shower and then put dirty hiking clothes back on. But anyways, this I used as my pillow as well. This is the Z-Packs one that has the fleece liner. This is a replacement that Z-Pack sent me. My first one just was shredded. I repaired it a bunch of times, but they do offer a warranty. It's either 1 year or a through hike, I guess, whichever comes first. But I emailed them during my hike when it got to a point where I couldn't repair it anymore. And it is a high wear and tear item if you're using it as a pillow. I mean, it constantly has your head sliding across it, and then also your sleeping pad or mat or whatever. So, I don't think it's a faulty product. I was just using it a lot, and I never put a buff over it. To be really honest with you, this is the one with the fleece liner. I never even bothered to turn the thing inside out. It was good enough the way it was. So, take that for what it is. But they replaced it, no questions asked. I sent them an email. They responded like within an hour, and they had one sent to the next trail town. Everything was good. Had one other issue with gear, but when I go over my pack, I'll go over that. So in my clothes bag, this is the North Face Thermoball. It's just a puffy jacket. It's an excellent one. They're around $200. I picked this one up at REI. It was one of those deals to where they had like this size, this color. They only had one size left, and it worked for me. So I think I got it for like $100. So always look for sales like that on clearance. But I would have paid $200 for this. I used it that much, and plus keep it the whole time. There was several nights where I'm absolutely glad that I kept it because it got pretty cold a few times, even in the summer. And also, like I was saying, sometimes your clothes get wet. You have to swap out. And you've got wet clothes that you need to change back into while you hike. So at night, you didn't want to put them in this bag. This was it for your pillow. So it was a built-in extra pillow. And then I kept basically 2 sets of hiking clothes, identical, which was just Asics running shorts, which worked out really well. And then Under Armour. I used their, I think they call it heat gear. It's like a summer weight, real lightweight shirt that was long sleeve that protected me from the sun. It was great. Didn't get too hot in it. And then just a regular Under Armour. I think they call it a tech tee over top of that. Man, that was perfect. And I got to give Under Armour a shout out because that stuff held up extremely well. In the stuff that I took out on the trail, I didn't buy it for the trail. I had put like at least a year or 2 worth of just general wear and tear on it. And I was like, oh, well, if it gets torn up while I'm on the trail, who cares? Can't be mad about it. The stuff's old anyways. held up way better than pretty much any other brand I saw out there on the trail. And I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not expensive. So other than the full set of hiking clothes to change into, the only thing that I had a little extra of, two extra pairs of socks. To me, it was just worth it. They're just darn tough. These are like the quarter weight, I don't know, quarter cushion. They work. They're not indestructible. They do have a lifetime warranty. You can send them in and they'll send them back, send new ones back. They're not indestructible. I had them pulling apart at seams, but they're better than any other sock I've ever found for all the wear and tear I was putting on them. So in here is just my extra set of clothes. All right. And then this is the Thermarest NeoAir X Lite sleeping pad, the yellow one that's so popular. It's popular for a reason. It's awesome. This one is the large size, so it's 5 inches longer, 5 inches wider than the regular size. It is 4 ounces heavier. This weighs a pound. The regular size weighs 4 ounces, but this was extremely comfortable. I sleep better on this than I do a mattress anymore. I got so used to it. It's awesome, and I'm glad I got the large size. I accidentally bought the large size, and it was the best accident I've had as far as gear goes. Worked out really well. My arms didn't fall off the sides of it, and it's just extremely comfortable. Held up to my heavy weight, and my buddy Stuck Norris that hiked with me, he started the trail nearly 400 pounds, exact same one. He did have the large size, and he had that thing. His time on the trail was, I think, like over 8 months, and everything was good. It's all good, man. They're good. They're big guy approved, super comfortable. I would buy this again if anything happened to this. And then the last thing that's inside my bag is the Z-Packs 20 degree sleeping bag. I think this is the wide. I don't know. They've changed what they call them since I bought this. But it's like a quilt style sleeping bag. I highly recommend it. It's got the foot boxes permanently in there, which I really liked, because no matter how I had it set up, I could always use the foot box to kind of orient where it was on me in the middle of the night. Got super used to it. I prefer it over just a full-blown quilt. And I did have them when I ordered this, and I think now it's kind of a standard thing you can just choose. But have the zipper go all the way down to like the very last kind of section of the foot box, so I could open up a little more. In the summertime, that was extremely handy because I used this the whole year. Well, I actually sent this home in Damascus, which was the biggest mistake I made as far as sending gear home. I thought, hey, it's warming up, no problem. I was going to try one of those sleeping bag liners, and the very first night I left Damascus, only hiked out a couple of miles. It got down into like the 40s. I froze. I had all my clothes on. I had my rain jacket on. That was probably the second or third most miserable night I had on the trail. So I actually had to hike back into Damascus the next morning. And I think at Mount Rogers Outfitters, I picked up a quilt that it wasn't very expensive, luckily, but it was heavier and bigger than this and wasn't as nice until I was able to, get with my dad and say, hey man, as soon as you get that thing home, turn it around, send it to my next town, which he did, got it back, used it the whole time. If you feel like it's too warm, you can always sleep on top of it. But there was plenty of times in the summer that I was glad that I still had this bag. And it's so light. This thing's lighter than most people's summer bags. So highly recommend it. I would buy this thing again in a heartbeat. Not cheap, but this is one of your big three items. Super lightweight, just good to go. Highly recommend. Z-Packs 20 degree sleeping bag. That covered me from beginning of March in Georgia all the way to when I was in it was October when I was in Maine. So highly recommend this. But anyways, that's it for what's on the inside of my bag. As you can see, I'm running pretty low on beer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rectify that situation really quick, and then when I've got that situation rectified, I'll come right back and we'll go over the bag itself. So hang tight. definitely feel better about my life now that I've got that situation rectified. So, as promised, let's go over the bag itself. As I said, this is the Z-Packs Arc Haul. Really, really liked this bag. Z-Packs makes another bag that you may be tempted to get if you're interested in their bags. They call it the Arc Blast. To be 100% honest, I would steer clear of it for a through hike. I'm sure it's an awesome bag for shorter hikes, but I take care of my gear. But there are plenty of times to where you just have wear and tear on your bag. I mean, I spent more than 6 months with this. Was everything I owned and needed was in it. Traveled from Harper's Ferry up to Maine, and then from Maine back to Florida with it. It held up extremely well. There's like no visible signs of wear and tear on this bag. With the exception of a few very small holes in the mesh pocket. And those were self-inflicted. That's my fault. That wasn't any fault of Z-Packs. I was just as you saw, I had this pretty full, and I'd put stuff in there sometimes that was sharp or whatever, and it just put little holes in it. But other than that, it's good. And then when I was in Maine, if you ever hiked up there on the AT, you know that there's a lot of times to where you're sliding across rock. Of course, you're going to run into the exact same thing in the White Mountains. And I'd imagine even like down in New York, just a real rocky state. And I'm not a super tall fella, so there was plenty of times, a lot of times in Maine to where I would have to just sit down on a rock and slide across it, and the bottom of my bag would slide across and drop on. But this bag gave me the confidence to not worry about it tearing apart. The difference between this one and the Arc Blast I just told you about is the material that it's made out of. The Arc Blast is made out of what's traditionally known as Cuban fiber. They've changed the name. I think it was I don't know. They call it like a Dyneema hybrid now. I think that the name was owned by somebody. I don't know. Who cares? But this, they call it a Dyneema Grid Stop. And if you look at it close, it's actually got a grid stop pattern to it, so if it starts to tear, it can kind of stop. And Cuban fiber is known to delaminate a little bit more on the wear and tear surfaces. And this thing's going to get some wear, and the weight penalty is absolutely trivial compared to the Arc Blast, in my opinion, for a through hike. You can get this thing, it only comes in one size as I'm making this video, as far as I know anyway, which I think is 62 liters. They do have a few different colors you can get it in, but the 62 liters does include this big outer pocket and the side pockets. This main pocket is like 40-something liters, but that's all good because the less room you have, the less crazy stuff you're going to bring. Trust me, you're going to bring stuff out there that you'll laugh at yourself later. But this at least will discourage you from bringing way too much stuff that's absolutely unnecessary. Just really loved this bag. The one thing I did to this side of it was I did add the shock cord. If you have them do this at the time you buy the bag, because these things are made to order, at least they were when I bought it. It didn't take that long to get, but it's only $10. The weight is just nothing even worth counting. And I really liked it for hanging clothes and things like that, to dry, bandanas, socks, whatever it was. Because, you could do it. It does come with the side kind of straps, but that's not always where the sun is. This offered a lot more real estate to let stuff hang and dry. And it never, to me, really got in the way of the pocket. Their website says that it kind of gets in the way of the pocket. I never had that problem. I always kept it really loose unless I needed to hang something. In that case, I'd have my bag completely packed. Then I would cinch it down with the stuff hanging, and it was never an issue. So, that's kind of subjective, but it worked really well for me, and I'm really glad I did it. The only other things that I added to it was these two shoulder pouches, which were really handy. On this one, you saw I would keep my GoPro in. On this side, I would keep usually like a couple of snacks so I could eat on the hoof, And then the hip belt pouches, I added these. They're extra. I told you there was one other piece of gear failure I had on the trail, and that was one of the hip belt pouches where it's actually, there's like elastic where it goes around the hip belt. It actually started pulling apart. That is kind of a high wear and tear area. You're walking with it all the time. But at the same time that I contacted Z-Packs about my pillow stuff sack, I told them about that. I sent them a couple of pictures that I just took with my phone, and no questions asked. They both showed up, and then they sent me some extra Cuban fiber repair tape just in case. They didn't charge me. They didn't even charge me shipping. They just told me, you know, hey, where's your next town you're going to be in? I told them. They said, okay, it'll be there. Sure enough, it was there. Can't say enough about their customer service. And one feature of the pack that I really liked that actually came in very handy for me, I would have had to buy a new pack if they didn't have this feature built in, is the replaceable hip belt. It is not difficult to replace the hip belt, but the one that I started with, I had lost a lot of weight as I was hiking, as you can imagine. It had gotten to where it was too big and I couldn't cinch it down enough, so I was carrying all the weight on my shoulders. So I just contacted Z-Packs and I ordered a new hip belt, and they just sent it to my next town. It wasn't very expensive. It was like $40, $45, I think, which is much less expensive than buying a new pack. And I actually, at the same time, they have these, I don't know if you can see them or not, like extra padding for the shoulders. I don't think that these are necessary if your hip belt's right, but I was just so gun shy from my hip belt being too loose and having all the weight on my shoulders that when I bought the hip belt, I bought these shoulder strap pads. I left them on here because they're so lightweight. I mean, and they are pretty comfortable, but that's something I don't find extremely necessary. I kind of bought that because I was, like I said, I was a little gun shy about what was going on. I didn't know that the hip belt was going to solve my problem, but 100% it did. Luckily, it's interchangeable. It's not a problem at all. So that's pretty much it for the pack. It's highly adjustable. You can really dial it in. They even sell it in different torso links and stuff. Just the regular worked perfectly well for me. One thing, how could I forget, that's absolutely awesome about this pack is its design. It's a full frame pack. It weighs 20 something ounces. That's ridiculous. It's super comfortable, weighs 20 something ounces empty, and it's got a full frame. But basically it's designed to arc. There's these straps that you can tighten down, and it creates airflow between your back. This was awesome in the summer. It creates airflow between your back and this mesh panel. That way the pack's not just riding on your back, creating any kind of... I saw some people that had other packs, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but actually ended up with basically chafing on their back from, you know, sweaty days, salty sweat, the pack just small rub on their back. When you're at it for 8 to 12 hours a day, that becomes a problem. But with this, you would just have it dialed in, arced out. It was never a problem. Plus, it kept your back a little cooler. Yeah, in the summer, your back's going to sweat whether there's a bag on it or not. But it's just so much better, so much more comfortable than if that didn't exist. So anyways, that's pretty much it for the pack. Love this thing. You know, I'll let you know I showed you everything that I ended with. If you have any questions about it, let me know. Sorry, this is kind of important. That's a little bit better. Oh, there's a couple things. I'm just looking over here I want to go over real quick. Trekking poles. These are my these are Black Diamond Trail Ergo Cork trekking poles. They were awesome. They have a full cork handle. I didn't like the Leckies for the reason that they had like plastic mixed in with the cork. These are just cork. Even on fishing rods, I like cork. Your natural body oils kind of season them up. They're super comfortable to where you don't get kind of hot spots or blisters, which basically with anything, you're going to develop calluses no matter what it's made out of. I just found it really comfortable, really liked it. I do have a couple of like holes in the straps, but I mean, 6+ months on the AT, what do you expect? I mean, that's normal wear and tear. I'm not putting that on Black Diamond. Then the tips, yeah, they wear down. You can see this one is pretty much like completely worn down compared to this one. Carbide tip up. As soon as that carbide tip wears down, they start to shrink fast. I should have replaced these a long time ago. Never did. They're really inexpensive. They're like $10, and you can just do them yourself. You know, you can replace them yourself. Easy enough to do. But really liked these poles. You know, obviously they are extendable and collapsible, but I would recommend, if you have these poles, to every now and then, if you keep them in the same length, as many people do. I actually was adjusting them a little bit every day to set my tent up, because my tent was about 5 millimeters higher than where I liked to hike with my poles. And yeah, trust me, you're going to dial your poles in that much that you're going to notice immediately when you start hiking if it's 5 millimeters off, which if I didn't adjust them after I broke down my tent, I wouldn't even be out of the campsite and I would know that I didn't adjust them. It's crazy, but you're walking with them all day, every day. But anyways, enough about that. Randomly take time to open and close them because they will seize up. Happened to my buddy Stuck Norris on one of his poles. I don't know if there's like some dissimilar metals between the cam and the shaft. These are aluminum poles. Maybe there's like some steel in the cam or something, and it just creates some corrosion, and one of his locked up. So to prevent that, maybe every couple weeks, or you know, just pick something out. Every time you do laundry, open and close your poles. I don't know. Yeah, that's up to you, but I recommend doing that. Anyways, this is just a GoPro mount that I added. Just a little pole mount. I was making videos on the trail, so you could kind of use it. I'd have it extended as a kind of a selfie stick. Worked out really well. So anyways, that's enough about the poles. These are the shoes that I wore on the hike. These are the Salomon XA Pro 3D. This is actually the newest version of this shoe. I started with the version before this, and I was actually pretty nervous about it, because you know how that goes. You have a pair of shoes that really works, they change it, oftentimes it becomes a problem. These ones, luckily though, for me, I feel like it was an improvement over the last version. Biggest thing being that the upper is more like a running shoe. It's a lot more flexible than the last one, and so they dry a little bit faster. They did improve the tread a little bit. The original ones on mud were like friggin' ice skates. These on mud are more like roller skates. They're still not great in mud, but the original ones were just sketchy in mud. These ones are a little better, but they're good for rock. They're not awesome, but you know, I mean, they do the trick. They made my feet feel good, but I mean, it's not like, I mean, there are some shoes out there that are extremely grippy. These I would put at, you know, 75% as far as the actual grip and traction, but you get really used to that, and you know kind of how to work with your foot placement and stuff like that. But the most important thing is that, you know, the midsoles are right, the drop of your shoe is right, the arch in your shoe is right. You're going to want to replace the insoles, which I did. I'm not going to even talk about that because that is 100% subjective. Shoes are pretty much 100% subjective as well, but at least if you're interested in these, I can tell you they're good shoes. I was getting 400 to 500 miles out of them, and I'm a big guy, so any places that was wear and tear was just because of my gait and how I walked, and it wasn't any fault of the shoe. Solid shoes for hiking. They consider them a trail runner. I would not buy them for running. They're just too substantial of a shoe. I mean, if I run in a shoe, I want a much lighter, more flexible shoe. This to me is more of a hiking shoe, but it dries out really fast. So, you know, yeah, you can call it a trail runner, but you know what I mean. It is what it is. Great shoes though, really liked them. And it's easy to replace your shoes on the trail. I think the first time I replaced them, it was at the outfitter there in Hot Springs, which was a great outfitter. And then, which I always tried to patronize the outfitters if I could, before I bought stuff online, because it's really nice that they're there. We need to keep them there for future hikers and for their own sake. They're providing a service. But anyway, enough about that. There was one pair I think I had to buy online, but that was just because of a logistics issue. So anyway, support the outfitters on the trail when you need gear. They're usually pretty reasonable and pretty fair, so keep that in mind. But anyways, if you have any questions about any of my gear, if you would like me to do any kind of videos going into more detail about any of the items, you know, just let me know and I can probably make that happen. Maybe I'll smoke pork shoulder or something, and I'll have a bunch of extra time to go over my tent, whatever it is. Let me know if there's anything that you'd really like for me to go over in more detail. I spent plenty of time with this gear. Like I said, it didn't get, you know, the whole AT. It actually got more time on it than most people that completed the AT, because as you know, if you've followed me at all, I took my time, enjoyed it, did all the side trips, went to, you know, saw every single town, checked everything out. That's just my style of hiking. So anyway, the gear has the time and the wear and tear on it. So I can definitely go over anything. I can answer any questions for you that you have about this particular gear. But anyways, if you take anything from this video, one piece of advice I want to offer up: when you're putting your gear together, if you're planning on doing a through hike in the future of the Appalachian Trail, is don't plan your hike when you're putting your gear together as a 2,200 mile hike. Plan your gear and your hike as a whole bunch of 4 to 5 day hikes, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're hiking from town to town. You don't need to start the AT with a first aid kit that belongs, you know, on your work truck. It's just not necessary. You don't need 2,200 miles worth of Band-Aids. You probably don't need any. I mean, odds are you can make it to the next town, or you're going to run into somebody that's got what you need while you're out there, because there's a lot of people out there. Trail's been out there for a long time. It's a very popular, busy trail. God willing, it'll be there for a long time in the future. But anyways, keep that in mind. That if you have that mentality, that'll help you eliminate a lot of this stuff. If you're not going to use it almost every day, don't carry it. Afford yourself some luxury items. You know, I mean, there was things you saw that I didn't have to carry, that I didn't necessarily use every day, but I kept everything light enough that it was never an issue. Weight on my back was never a problem. So if you're watching this video, you're actually ahead of the game in a lot of ways. I met a lot of people out there, surprisingly enough, that had started the trail that just had extremely heavy packs and ended up off the trail real quick. And I don't want to see that happen to you. Surely you're putting a lot of time, effort, resources into planning this thing. So do it right. Have the right mentality about it. You're just hiking from town to town. So if you can go without it for a few days, you're good to go. It's easy to find stuff in towns. It's easy to have stuff sent to towns. Don't be worried about that at all. That was never an issue. So anyways, I'm going to go check on my brisket. Pretty excited about how well I'm going to eat tonight. So if you have any questions or comments, again, leave them in the comments, and I will see you next time.